Hi, my name is Kaylee Branch and I'll be giving my speech today. Here is my audience. Here are my note cards. I will now begin my speech. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kennedy Space Station, we have liftoff. On July 16th of 1969, almost exactly 47 years ago, NASA's Apollo 11 mission was on its way to the moon. A photo taken by Neil Armstrong has become notably one of the most remarkable images in U.S. history. Today I'll be explaining the history, background, and details of the Apollo 11 mission, and as well as the purpose of taking this spectacular photo. Getting to the moon was the next huge mission for someone to accomplish in the world. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy spoke to Congress about wanting to get a man on the moon as fast as possible. The Soviet Union and the United States were in a Cold War, which also led to the space race. The Soviet Union had already launched the first satellite into space, as well as the gap even widened when they sent the first man to fly in orbit. President John F. Kennedy and the United States were left to play catch-up in this space race. John F. Kennedy called the nation to, quote, commit itself to achieving the goal before the end of the decade, to land a man on the moon and return him safely, according to Barbara Kramer in her book. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration was responsible for completing this task and began working immediately on the Apollo project. Through months of research, planning, failing, replanning, and multiple trips, Apollo 11 was set to go to the moon. 3 lucky astronauts were chosen to complete this mission: Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon and was responsible for capturing the images of the moonwalking process. He was the mission commander and worked as a test pilot in the United States Air Force. With his superb pilot skills, Armstrong had saved a previous mission of Gemini 8 from an out-of-control capsule from almost certain disaster. Because of this, he was given the privilege to make the first steps on the moon and was also charged of piloting the lunar module. The graduate from West Point with a doctorate from MIT, Buzz Aldrin was almost born to go to the moon. As a young boy, Buzz loved collecting rocks and flew in an airplane at age 2, and his mother's maiden name was Moon. He is the one pictured here in this image I have for you today. Between breaking records from the longest spacewalk, one of the first people being on the moon, and taking the first selfie in space, he is an incredibly astronaut. Michael Collins, the 3rd astronaut in the mission, was also a West Point graduate and was in charge of flying the command module. Months following the trip, he was often asked, were you disappointed for not getting to go to the moon? But he never was. He always said that he was so excited to be that close to the moon that it didn't even bother him. With these 3 guys, the mission was bound to be successful. Each part of this mission had to work flawlessly for the next step to be completed. According to NASA.com, the spacecraft was in 3 parts: a cone-shaped command module, a service module which carried the fuel, and a lunar module which was going to land on the moon. After a textbook-perfect liftoff to space, the 3 astronauts launched the spacecraft toward the moon. After safely getting into the moon orbit, it was time for the lunar module to separate from Collins' command module. The lunar module landed almost 4 miles from the predicted area to touchdown. It was a very scary moment for these 2 moonwalkers, as sirens and alarms were constantly going off and their fuel was running out quick. Neil Armstrong was left to manually pilot this lunar module as Aldrin called out the distances out loud. With only a short 30 seconds of fuel remaining, the Eagle safely settled onto the moon's surface, according to Barbara Kramer. Once the Eagle landed on the moon, it was time to go exploring. After 4 hours after being landed, Neil and Buzz climbed on the ladder of the lunar module and set up the camera that millions of Americans began watching live on TV. They began collecting dust, white rock, and received a call from none only the American President, Nixon. According to the Lunar and Planetary Institute, they collected about 23 scoops of rock and soil, which weighed almost 48 pounds. It was done. The moon had been won, and the United States came together and were victorious over the Soviet Union. The race to the moon united the entire country as they worked hard to build Apollo and get to the moon. Once these 3 astronauts arrived back to the U.S., they were sent on a 7-week trip through 25 countries as crowds cheered as they met the famous moonwalkers. These guys had no idea that when they got back, they would receive so much national attention. They were national heroes, and their legacies still live on today. Once the samples were brought back and studied, there was even a new element found. The titanium-rich compound was named armalcolite, honored after the crew. The name was given after Arm for Armstrong, Al for Aldrin, and Col for Collins, according to Carl Green. Armalcolite. That's one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind, Neil Armstrong exclaimed as the Eagle landed onto the moon's surface. The history, facts, and relevant information behind this iconic photo was one giant leap for mankind and has led to extraordinary space exploration. On July 16, 1969, almost exactly 47 years ago, the NASA Apollo 11 mission was on its way to the moon. The image of Buzz Aldrin and the U.S. flag flying high above the moon changed the world forever. Thank you. I will now take a minute of questions from my audience.
Was Michael Collins, how come he didn't get to go
Onto the moon?
onto the moon?
So Michael Collins was in charge of flying the command module, which was, so the lunar module was detached from the command module when it went to the moon, and he was in charge of keeping a lunar orbit around the moon, and so he did not get to go to the moon. But he was still very close. It was pretty exciting for him to get to do that.
How long were they on the moon?
The lunar module was on the moon for about 22 hours, where they collected rocks and soil and did all kinds of tests. They planted the flag into the moon and all kinds of things like that.
Were they quarantined when they arrived back on Earth?
Yeah, that was something I found very interesting when I was doing that research, because when they got back, they actually were quarantined for 18 hours in this little bitty silver box that even President Nixon was sitting there looking at and waving at them while they were there. But they were in there for 18 hours, and after that, the doctors gave them a clear to go ahead, and they didn't have any alien dust or anything like that. So it's a long 18 hours, I bet. Well, thank you, audience, for my questions. I will now, that is the end of my speech. Here is my audience. Thanks for watching.